Another day of drawing trees. I think I wrote it day 9. Here's where we're going. On my reference image here today, it's a little bit, it's one of those, there's not a lot of real definitive trees in there today. But we just got to keep sort of that shape going. Here's the square we're drawing. So we're just going to kind of keep the tree texture in there, but it's not going to be what your triangle, like a triangle shape. Just keeping the texture going, keeping that realism going. Not going to force it to be, definitive trees by any means. Here we go. Another day of trees. I did not get my, never mind. Here we go. Starting with the 2H pencil, just gonna do my normal blobs for my first layer. Nope, this one's out of lead, it appears. Oh, they're completely out of lead, perhaps. Riveting start. Pencil out of lead. 1 second, please. Come on. Okay. Might be completely out of lead. Oh, we got some. All right. Apologies, people on the replay. Just bear with me for 1 second here. There we go. Back at it. Here we go. So yeah, these trees, they all kind of just disappear. So we just have some super faint ones in here, but maybe it'll be some light, easy work today. As there's not really anything too definitive tree-wise here in the forest. So starting out with my 2H, just putting in some light sort of undervalues here. And then we'll fill in these blobs over here. And we're pretty close to the foreground here, so I can make slightly larger marks here because obviously due to our perspective, these would be scaled up a little bit more than like trees up here. So you can make a little bit larger marks. Just keep them random. So we're gonna go 2H pencil, then HB, and then a 2B for our darkest shadows. Let's get a little wide here. Yeah, that's fine. This kind of just disappears into something here. And then there's some random marks. It's kind of nice when you just have, random tree textures in here. There's not really definitive trees because you can kind of just zone out and get in a nice rhythm. But it's all about layering your values to build texture through contrast here. That's what I'm going for. Let me scale it a little bit. Starts out as scribbles, but it just slowly, as we work our way, things get more defined and things really take shape. So don't get too nervous early on. Wow, how'd you do that? So I'm layering darker values on lighter values, and then you build the texture. Let me show you the whole thing here. So I got a 2H, I do a layer with some lighter values, then I get a little darker and then a little darker. Just making tiny little marks in the direction of the trees, and it slowly builds this, I don't want to toot my own horn, this incredible texture, some might say. So my first ever live streams to watch. Pressure's on. Well, I'm going to try to keep it as riveting as I can. But this is a very slow and tedious process building this texture. The lives are, I don't watch too many lives. Lives are pretty, it's pretty fun just to scroll through and see what you come up on. My favorite one, I've mentioned this a bunch of times, is one time it was just a person sleeping on a couch. But they had like 30 people watching. And then I thought about my lives when I have like 4. And I cried. But yeah, this is a pretty tedious process of just slowly building texture. And let me show you, I am working off a reference image here. This is a photo I took of Mount Rainier. And the little section I'm working on today, there's nothing really definitive tree-wise. But that's why I like putting in all the effort, and the rest of the forest is good, because then when you have these miscellaneous, sort of like blobby, I don't know, blobby sort of nothingness, just random shapes, it fills in like the natural, people's brains fill it in as just sort of that natural and organic forest, right? You don't need to have like perfect triangles the whole time. But it still takes a while, because I like, still want to maintain the quality of the texture, even though they're not really your regs tree shape. Here's a full, so this is Mount Rainier up here. And, but before I get to that, and this everyday thing I'm doing, going live every day, I want to finish off these trees, because I've been in a pretty good rhythm on them. I'm sure people are tired of watching me draw them, but I need to make progress. I need to finish this so I can get onto some new projects I'm working on. I want to make this like tree built out of all these different animals, talking about biodiversity. I started it like a year and a half ago, but my YouTube channel has been getting a fair amount of hits, so I focused on building those tutorials, and this has been on the back burner for like 8 months. So now that's why I'm committing to these lives every day, because it's kind of the only time I was ever making progress. But again, I'm sure people are ready for me to stop drawing trees. But I like to do one little square like this because it forces me to keep my quality up. If I was gonna like aim to get all of these squares done, I would just be rushing. Whereas finishing one of these squares after my regular job, I can really just hone in and not rush. So yeah, in this front, this is the foreground, so like I mentioned a few minutes ago, I'm scaling up my marks a little bit. And these random tree branches we see here, even though there's not like a definitive top to it, kind of goes into the shadow. I'm making my marks a little bit bigger than usual. This photo was taken right at sunrise, so there's not a whole lot of sunlight hitting it. I mean, you can see some of these highlights in here, but this tree here must have been almost completely in shadow, because you don't see much of it. Which, if you're working, off a reference image, obviously that's a lot easier, but kind of like one of the most important details if you're drawing either, from your own imagination, or you're out in nature drawing, always consider where your light's coming from. And that's obviously super important for photography, which, as mentioned, I took this photo, so. So looks like there's a little tree coming up here. Kind of hard to distinguish. But I just want to maintain the texture, even though these trees are going to mostly be covered up in shadows here in a second. So I'll show people, again, here is my reference image. This is zoomed way in. But you can see, let me see, where was I? Way down here. There's not really, this is the square right here. There's not really anything definitive that looks like a tree in the work I'm doing today. So I just want to maintain the texture. Just want to get that point across. You don't, sometimes people draw what they sort of imagine in their head too much. And, you know, in a forest, you don't always just see definitive trees. So this is my 2B pencil now. I'm going to just start filling in shadows. There is one little tree here you do see. And even though these areas are mostly darker shadows, I'm still just making little marks, making, you know, just slight variations in the value with it. So even in those darker areas, you're still getting a little bit of that texture. But I'm working at such a small scale here, you know, if I were to just make big marks, the scale wouldn't match up. So be sure to lift your pencil up often. And if you want to watch a more succinct tutorial, well, I don't know if it's succinct, it's like a half an hour. I have a tutorial, how to draw a forest, where I have a lot tighter visuals there so you can see more up close what I'm doing. There is a hint of a tree trunk here that I'm going to work in a second, which I really like to do because then it's just one of those tiny little details to give it a little realism. Down here we're all in shadow, so I'm just going to fill this up. As mentioned, these are some bigger branches, so I'm separating my lines just a wee bit. I'm varying my pressure a little bit, so again, here, this tree is, you can still slightly see some branches a little. So I'm just trying to sort of work some other values. And then adding a little pressure to get some deeper shadows around it. People want to see the whole thing, there you go. Yeah, so if you're interested in learning some of my drawing techniques, check out my tutorials. If there's any tutorial that you've been searching for, you know, more nature and landscape-based. Wildlife, I've done a couple wildlife, a wolf and a deer tutorial, but it seems like most people, my landscapes have done better. But anyways, check out some of my tutorials if you're wanting to learn how to draw some naturey things. And if there's one that you wish I would do, drop a comment somewhere and see if I can work it in. I've kind of gotten behind on my tutorials because I've started these drawn to adventure videos. You know, it's summer. I want to be outside. I want to see some cool stuff. So I've been recording hikes that I go on and then trying to draw outside, which is something I haven't ever really consistently attempted. So there's a couple episodes of that up. If you're interested, it's called Drawn to Adventure. But so far I've gone to Olympic National Park, Mount Rainier National Park, and North Cascades, which I've learned some tough lessons. You know, I think the biggest thing so far is it's hard to go on a physically exhausting hike and then draw. So that has been a struggle so far. But I'm currently working on the third episode. So in the forest here, I'm not trying to match the photo exactly. It's more just for inspiration. So I don't care if my trees are a little off. It's more I want to make sure I nail the texture. There's kind of a hidden tree right here, so I'm just trying to... It's super dark. I can barely see it on the reference image, but just putting a little hint of it in. And at the end, like I have been doing on the other days, I'm going to go back over with my eraser just to finesse things a little bit. And, you know, you got to be super careful with it, but it kind of works as a blending tool a little bit to sort of soften little things together, kind of really helps enhance the texture a little bit, which I'll show you in a minute. Yeah, so this tree kind of just disappears up here. Just doing little darker shadows on the interior. You know, where all those branches coming on the trunk, it's going to be some heavier shadows, so I want to make sure I put just some tiny dots there without covering up too much of this texture we've been building. And down here, so here's the, this is a lake down here. So there's something that must be casting a shadow on this tree here. Well, some other trees must be casting a shadow on it. It's pretty dark. How many more squares remain? Let me show you. So what is it? This is 12 high. So that's about 10. Under 20, I think. So the whole thing is 12 by 18. But, you know, once I get down to the lake here, I might be able to, I might go for more than 1 square a day. But the trees take me quite a bit. And also my hand gets tired from making those, all the little marks. These are actually the most painful ones to do. I'll probably save those till last. And that's, again, as I've talked about, I want the mountain to be kind of exactly spot on. So maybe 20 or so squares. And most of those are the trees. So I hope people are ready to see more trees. You're looking at about 3 more weeks. Yep. Yeah, and that's if I do it every day. I know there's a few days, like tomorrow I won't be able to draw. So I got to take care of some stuff around the house. But if I were to do it every day, yeah, 3 weeks. So yeah, this tree kind of just is hiding in the shadows here. I'll show everybody in a second again. It's kind of just random, you know, I'm just going for random tree texture because there's not a definitive tree showing here. This little one I'm going to work on in a second though. So I'm just trying to maintain that texture, and with all the work putting around it, you know, that is going to give it that natural foresty look. You know, you're not going to get just a bunch of perfectly formed trees. And that's also what makes all this other work super important, because people's brains, when they look at this, you know, it sort of fills in the illusion of it being a forest. Like looking at it way out here, it's not like you say, oh, well, that's not in the shape of a tree. So I just want to remain true to the reference image a little bit there. Okay, so this little one right here, you do see a little bit of a tree trunk down the center. And I like to make sure I get those in, because it's just a tiny little detail that connects people to, like, hey, there's a tree there. So what I do for that is I got this guy, and you got to be super careful with it because it's really aggressive. I'm using the sharper edge of it. We're using different hardness pencils and a mono eraser. I love seeing your progress. I got a few erasers, so this is layering a 2H, an HB, and a 2B pencil. Yeah, and so then I got, I'm gonna use this eraser in a second, but right now I'm gonna use this. And thanks, Paige. So to get the little tree trunk in, just using the edge, you gotta be super subtle with it. And then you just go back in and you just finesse it a little bit. You don't want to cover up all that work we just did. So it's just a super subtle, you might be the only one that ever sees that. But, so then with this other eraser, what I like to do is rough it up on a little sandpaper. So I get a rough texture, and that is going to help us maintain our texture because it's not erasing smoothly. And I just do little dabs. And this can give me super subtle variations in my values. And you want to make sure you keep doing the little taps. You don't want to do big eraser marks because you're going to erase some of your work. But what I like about this eraser, as I talk about all the time, is it's actually not great at erasing. So I can just lift sort of that top layer of graphite off and really build the texture. So I'm pretty happy with this tree. Yeah, as I say that, I want to add a little bit. Just add a little bit in there. And as mentioned, there's a little one hiding down here that I'm going to give a little more shape to in a second. This random, kind of not full tree here just has little bits of highlights hitting it, or sunlight hitting it, causing highlights. So this little one down here, it's super subtle, but I just want to add a little more definition to it. I'm going to try your technique. It's really fascinating what you have accomplished. Thanks. Yeah, if you were here earlier, there's a more succinct tutorial how to draw a forest, and I have some better angles. But yeah, I mean, the good thing about the technique is it's tough to mess up, because at the first few rounds are just basically scribbling. And then, like I just showed you, if you use your eraser, you can you want to mimic the same sort of motion you made with your pencil, just tiny little marks with it, and just lift up a little bit. But yeah, this tree is just hiding here in the shadow, and I think I'm pretty happy with that, even though you don't really see anything too definitive there. Yeah, so you're layering lighter values to darker, which creates contrast between your different values, and that contrast is what creates the texture. And if you keep your marks really small, you can do this to this scale, which these are little 1 by 1 inch squares. Of course, as people have asked many times, you could also draw larger. But I'm too far in to go back now. There's just some little marks hiding back here. Just adding slight variations in the shadows, because again, if you were there in person, you're going to see little hints of something in there. And on my reference photo, I did kind of crush the blacks down a little bit. Yeah, I think that's good. So let me just one last time show you the reference image. So you can see here, where'd it go? There's kind of not a lot of definitive tree in this one. So besides that little tree right there, I really am just mimicking the texture of everything. I feel like the phone also kind of makes these little marks right here a little bit more dramatic. They're not quite as bright as they appear on the phone in real life, but what can you do? All right, well, that's day 9. So tomorrow we'll probably be back up here and continue the next row. So there you go. Mount Rainier, Reflection Lakes. Thanks for watching. If you care about me at all, you're subscribed. If you don't, I won't really know.